Hey folks, how you doing? This is Kurt with Mañana No Mas, and we're gonna take things up a notch and maybe do things just a little bit different today on this Friday morning. Hey folks, how you doing? It's Kurt with Mañana No Mas, and I want to do things just a little bit different today. I have been really looking at, gosh, how many social accounts do I have? How many entities, messages, threads, strings do I try to support as a person or as an organization? Because of course, our agency does work as well. But and I'm going to trim some of that down, and you're going to see an expansion of content on some channels, and you're going to see a reduction to 0 on some other channels, because realistically, we just got to narrow some things down and simplify some things. Now, today is kind of a combination, kind of message, topic, whatever. If you want to jump into the conversation, by all means, hit me with some comments over there, whatever channel you're watching on, Facebook, YouTube, X, whatever you're watching. Go ahead and put comments in under comments, and we can try and interact. Let me know who you are, where you're from, all that kind of thing. First things first, who is even interested in the fact that there is a Mike Tyson fight tonight? I'm not into fighting per se. Like, I might watch the one-off MMA event or something like that. My kid's kind of into it. My kid does jiu-jitsu, and he's on the wrestling team at school. And so, there is some interest, and I'm somewhat athletic. And so sometimes I get drawn to it, but I'm not like committed. Like, I'm not a Joe Rogan, know everybody, every stat, everything. But I am a child of the 70s and 80s. And when Mike Tyson is going to get back into the ring at his age, I mean, he's like my age. When he gets back into the ring at my age against someone so much younger, it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. Now, I did get distracted this morning checking my email and getting rid of the spam, which we'll discuss here in just a heartbeat. But this video came up on my phone today. And you see that sweet little girl? She is interviewing Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson is going to be in a big fight tonight. And some of us have seen Mike Tyson recently, like in the movie Hangover, or maybe on an interview with a night show or something. Like maybe you've seen him in a more gregarious role. Folks, there's a different Mike Tyson that people my age remember. We remember a dude that got into the ring and looked at people like he was going to kill them and then proceeded to try to kill them. We would say, oh, no, he wasn't going to kill anybody. He hits people hard enough to put their lights out for good. In the old days, you could watch tapes. You could go back and look. And again, I am not into fighting at this level. I'm not into it like other people are into it. But I can remember vividly, like, people getting all excited to see a Mike Tyson fight and then it being over in 30 seconds. We remember those things. And so somebody thought it would be a good idea to put him in a room alone with a little girl and then have her ask questions. And she says, hey, when all this is done, what do you want your legacy to be? Now, she's a junior reporter. It's a standard question. What do you want your legacy to be? And Mike Tyson hits her like straight between the eyes. He goes, I don't believe in the word legacy. And then I don't know why I sound like Stallone there. He doesn't sound like Stallone. Anyway, he's like, I don't believe in the word legacy. And then he goes, because when I'm dead, I'm dust. What do I care if I'm dust? There's no legacy. That's ego. That's your ego asking you what you want your legacy to be. And he rolls into this thing with her, and he looks at her like he's going to kill her. And she holds her ground. She just says, well, thank you for your insightful answer. Nobody gave me an answer like that before. Right? Like, all right, you go, little girl. But it's like, who put Mike Tyson in an interview with this child? That's like one thing, right? So I see that. Like, who put her in this interview with this child? And then the child asked the very, plain vanilla question, what do you want your legacy to be? And then he hits her with, now, I'm a believer. I believe there's life after death. I believe that there's a connection to things. A lot of people believe that there's connections to things, regardless of what their faith levels are. And then Mike comes out and says, when you're dead, you're dead, you're dust. Nothing matters anyway. What do you care what people are thinking? There's no such thing as legacy. That's just your ego talking. And this girl's just like, oh. so I did. I got a kick out of that. Something to think about. Now, I don't know. You never know what's real. You never know what's fake. You never know what's happening. I saw a thing about the weigh-in with him and Jake Paul, and apparently, I don't know what happened, but he slugged Jake Paul during the weigh-in. So it'll be interesting. Like, I don't know where because it sounds like, oh, it's going to be a demonstrative fight. What do they call those? An exhibition. Oh, it's going to be an exhibition fight. No, it sounds like it's going to be a real fight. So it'll be interesting. Do I want to sign up for Netflix so I can see it live? I don't know. I don't think I do. So let's talk about something else. Let's jump onto something else before I even talk about business. What about that White House visit yesterday? I don't talk too much about politics on my Mañana No Mas show. I don't. I try to stick with entrepreneurship, business, and these things. Okay. But one thing to recognize if you're in business is that politics is very much in line with your business. For instance, when DEI was coming out and I lived in California and I got laid off by Suzuki, and people specifically told me that I was qualified for the job and I would be a great fit if I wasn't in my 50s and white. Folks, I got to tell you, that hits a little different. It hits a little different when you're figuring out, okay, am I going to relaunch my agency or am I going to go get another job? And when you're trying to get a job and you're interviewing for a job that's $140,000, $150,000 a year, and they say, well, you're the most qualified, but we have to give it to somebody else because of our DEI initiatives. Like when they verbally tell you that and you walk away like you're not going to sue anybody, that's a wake-up call, right? So when I posted content that was anti-DEI or a little more inquisitive about DEI practices, I posted content and I said, I don't know how much longer this can last. Companies are going to walk backwards. If you pick somebody that is qualified, have at it. If you pick someone that's qualified, have at it. If you pick someone that's not qualified, but you invest in that person and you prop them up and you give them a pathway to success. If you invest in them and you train them and you work with them and you build them into what you need them to be, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. But what was happening was they were hiring people that weren't qualified, and then businesses, enterprise organizations didn't allot for the training or the development time to get up to speed. And so they would let these people flounder for 8 months, 9 months, a year with no successes, with nothing. And then they would say, oh, that's not working. And then they would promote them or move them to another position because now that they've got them on staff, they for sure can't fire them or liquidate them. And so then they would hire more people to bring them in underneath them. And then their head count blossoms. So what happened? All these companies started losing money because they were chasing identity politics instead of corporate growth. Shareholders don't care about your identity politics if it gets in the way of corporate growth. So now we're seeing all these companies roll back just in time for Trump to come into office, which is a little bit odd, right? The timing's a little unique. You know, if you go back 2, 3, 4 months, you're going to see companies like Harley Davidson, like I'm trying to think of all the different companies that are out there. Tractor Supply. I've been in Kansas too long because now I'm thinking of like John Deere. But there's a bunch of these, what we consider larger companies that have rolled back on their initiatives, their policies, and they've made public announcements that they're rolling back on it. It's not just enough to say, like in a closed room, to say, we're not going to do this anymore. They've made it like public, like we are no longer supporting this. So it's really hard to talk about this being the person that I am and not sounding like some other people group or getting labeled as some other people group. I am the first to say, if you're qualified, if you've got value to bring to the conversation, I don't care what gender you are. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care who you get naked with. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what color your hair is. Bring the value to the conversation. Bring the value to the conversation. As someone that runs their own podcast, the Mañana No Mas podcast, I'm constantly saying to people, like I'll meet with guests on camera, off camera, whatever, and think about the interview I just did with Topher. It was actually part of the interview where he is someone who is pro diversity, and I said I'm okay with diversity, but when they say when someone says I am from an underprivileged people group, I am from a when they say I'm held back. Well, like in the WordPress space or in this space, like I'm live. I got a laptop, I got a webcam, I'm connected to the internet, and I'm coming to you live right now on whatever channel, Facebook, YouTube, X. These tools are available to everybody. If you live in the United States and you have a laptop with a webcam and access to the internet, newsflash, this could be at the library, right? In one of those little private rooms you can get for free. You can broadcast your message. So in the WordPress space, when someone says, well, I'm from a disadvantaged people group, I personally have an issue with that because I didn't go to college to do stuff in WordPress. I'm self-taught. And then being self-taught, I started doing work for others. And as I did more work for others, my confidence grew. Now I've been working in WordPress for 20 freaking years. I've been working with WordPress. So do I have a little bit of experience? Yes. And then do I get online and do I make some statements about WordPress or some tutorials about WordPress? How to use Lifter LMS, which I became an expert in. How to migrate SCORM to WordPress, which I became an expert in. These are things that I can add value with, and I do. And then when I do that, it props me up into different networking organizations, different circles. I'm asked to speak publicly. I'm asked to teach at schools, things like that. And then people will say, well, I can't do that because I'm from a disadvantaged people group. That doesn't make any sense. If you're in the United States and you have a laptop with a webcam and you have internet access, you can absolutely follow the path that I followed and put in 20 years worth of work and get to where people ask you to come and speak to their companies and talk at schools. It's just you want it to happen in 3 months or 6 months because you might see the Kurt Von Onen that's been online for a year and a half, 2 years doing all these live shows, and you don't recognize the 20 years of work it took in the background to become an expert to get to where we're at. And so I invite people all the time to the podcast. I tell them, I don't care if you're Black, Filipino, Vietnamese, French, Italian, male, female, blue hair, brown hair, no hair. I don't care. But if you come to the show, we're going to talk about what value you're adding to whatever the conversation is. If it's about business, if it's about a new program, if it's about a new product, if it's about fitness and its relationship to your success as an entrepreneur. These are the things that we're focusing on the Mañana No Mas podcast. What we're not going to talk about on the podcast is you got on the show because you meet a certain demographic. Like that's not going to happen. So that I found that to be super, super interesting. Now, I started by saying, how friendly did you think that visit was at the White House? And this is where my head's going. It's hard to put all of this into something that makes sense. It's hard to make it make sense. There's so much swimming around. There's so many distractions up in here. I remember Biden, the video of him, and I said, that can't be real. And then I started looking it up, and it was real, where he put the Trump hat on, when he was talking to that group of people, and they had a MAGA hat. And he said, oh, you should put it on. You should put it on. Then he put it on, and he smiled from ear to ear. It was like he really wanted to wear the MAGA hat. And then on election day, his wife dresses up in a completely red suit to go vote, right? Red skirt suit or something like that. And I was like, that's weird. Why would she wear bright red like that? Clothes are clothes. I know other people could say clothes are clothes, right? But think about Kamala's campaign and the things that Biden did during her campaign, things he said during her campaign, contradictions between Kamala and Joe. And then Kamala, they say, what would you do different than Joe? She says, nothing comes to mind. And then she gets up on stage and says, I'm going to do a bunch of things on day one. It's almost like they lost on purpose. And I know that people don't understand sometimes how I say things like that. But to me, it's almost like they lost on purpose. So I immediately start thinking, well, where's the gain in that? Who's getting paid off? Where's the money going to come from with this deal? How would they lose on purpose? It doesn't make any sense. How do you spend $1 billion on your campaign in 3 months, go $20 million over budget, and lose that way? I just, the lack of consistency in messaging. And the thing is, I have a lot of friends that voted for Kamala, and that's okay. That's okay. Right. So I'm not judgmental on your thoughts or who you voted for, what your goals are. But people started to have conversations with me that were like, as a Christian, I couldn't morally vote for Trump because of XYZ. And I was like, well, then how could you morally vote for Kamala because of XYZ? Right. And so people were really split over how they were going to think of things. And then to me, it's like we get all the way up here and it says, like when Trump won, they said Trump won. I thought that was a little odd because I'm thinking back to the 2020 election, right? And it drug on a little bit. But this election, it was like Trump won. No questions asked, Trump won. And then she concedes the next morning. Biden gives him a congratulations message and says the transfer of power is going to be easy and smooth. And then the difference between Trump meeting Obama and Trump meeting Biden in the White House for these transition talks is night and day, night and day. If you just looked at the Biden footage, you would just go, okay, yeah, it's cool. Two dudes switching seats. They've been around the block before. Hey, congrats. I'll leave, whatever. Like, and but they look happy. Biden looks happy. What I didn't understand was the day after the election, Biden made that speech. He completed all his sentences. He spoke with clarity and he had a little giddy up in his step. And I was like, did they just completely drug that man for his whole presidency? Were we seeing the real Biden? A lot of people say, oh, that's not the real Biden. There's 4 Bidens. I don't know. I'm not an expert in these things. Yeah, the ears look different. Yeah, the jawline looks a little different. Yeah, that one Biden's really tall. But hey, let's forget all that. The guy that gave the speech after the election had clarity, cadence, and all the things you would look for from like a leader, which we hadn't seen in a long time. And then Kamala was running around campaigning. The country felt like there was no leader. And so when we elect Trump in, a lot of people are happy because they're like, hey, we finally got a leader. And then the meeting happens at the White House and they seem happy to see each other. And it was like a genuine face, happy, firm handshake kind of thing. I don't think that was acting. They seemed actually happy to see each other. And then all these appointments and all these things happening with that Trump's putting in place. Matt Gaetz, RFK Jr., Ramaswamy, Tulsi Gabbard, the guy from Fox News. I can't remember his name. It'll come to me after I hit the stop button. But all of these things are happening very quickly, very quickly, and the announcements are happening like lickety split, lickety split, lickety split, and it almost seems too smooth and too orchestrated. So I don't know what you think about that, but here's why I bring these kinds of things up. Because now I'm going to transition into business. I'm going to tell you, folks, the Mañana No Mas agency has sustained a little bit of growth this year since moving to Kansas. We've had the ability to say no to certain projects, which has given us the ability to say yes to the better projects. So we've had a lot of great projects, and we've focused on SCORM, and we've made a lot of headway with SCORM and things like that. And so what is the matches situation, brother? I'm not sure what you mean. But it's good to have you here. That's here we go. I'm going to try and say it. Run through Pawan says, what is the matches situation? I'm not sure what the match is, unless we're talking about going back to the fight with Tyson. The fight with Tyson, that's pretty awesome. But I don't know if we're talking about, but anyway. And he says true here at 9:53. That was just a minute ago. So maybe you were paying attention to politics too. And I try not to focus too much on the politics, right? Like I'm not a commentator on politics, but I am a business owner. And so when I'm seeing all of these things happening, so I'm seeing DEI come down a few levels, right? I'm seeing that they're talking about changing a lot of the policies in the public school system and possibly getting rid of the public school system as we know it and going to a state-run organization. People are starting to panic about that. But what people don't realize, I homeschooled my kids in California through a charter organization. And even though that charter seemed to have a lot of funding, in retrospect, that funding was the smallest percentage that they could have gotten from the federal allocations. So when we say we're going to eliminate governmental waste at the top level, federal level, and we're going to drive education back to the states, 70-80% of that budget that comes out of our taxes that pays for public schooling, to my knowledge, is all federal level administration nonsense. And that federal level administration nonsense is what has introduced a ton load of indoctrination and weird motives into our schools. And so we look at that, we go, well, that's going to change my apprentices that I hire for my agency in the next 3 to 5 years. If all of these policies change and curriculum changes and indoctrination changes channels a little bit, and people begin to think less with identity politics and more about meritocracy, as a business owner, and track me here, I'm not trying to ignite people that have a different thought than I have. I'm not trying to fan a bunch of hate. I'm trying to focus on from a business perspective. So track me from a business perspective. If the schools begin to promote meritocracy over identity politics, we as business people are going to have a much better selection of apprentices and journeymen and people to bring into our industries. And so when I go and I speak at these schools, I have the opportunity. So, and I've done this for a long time. I've always believed in speaking at the schools and farming into our young people and giving them some information about what it's like to work in the real world. And so when I go and speak at these schools, I'm getting firsthand exposure to the best talent that these schools are going to release into the public. I have been propagating this message since I was the training manager at Ducati, the training manager at Suzuki. I was on the PAC committee at Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. For me, having first glimpse at the student base to know who's got their act together, who's going to be not just grades. I'm not looking for the top 10% of grades or the top 5 students for grades in it. I'm looking at attendance, attitude, trainability, right? Then what are the grades like and stuff like that. And so when you expose yourself at the scholastic level to that student base, you get the pick of the litter, which is what I always strive to do. As our agency grows, we're going to try and bring in more and more young people. But again, I drive back to, if the schools begin to focus on meritocracy, skills, productivity, efficiency, and capability with scholastics over some of the other things they've been focused on recently, last decade maybe, I think we're going to see a much better output through business, especially small and mid-sized businesses. So I'm really pretty enthusiastic about what's happening. The other thing that I'm really enthusiastic about what's happening is I still have a little bit of angst in me about the whole pandemic thing, because I did not prescribe to the pandemic initiatives at all. And so I still have a little resentment, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, towards leadership during the pandemic process. And to see RFK Jr. coming out with a few of the videos that he's published and like take a look at this yellow dye, right? So he just goes, let's just take a look at this yellow dye. Let's take a look at this one thing. And he takes a look at the yellow dye and he goes, it does this, 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 it did that. This is where it comes from. This is who makes money on it. This is where they put it. This is what they add it to. And this is what it does to your body. And this is why I want to get rid of it. When I see that message, I am so happy, because here's the truth. As a fat American, which I'm a fat American, as a fat American that traveled to Italy for work, when I got to Italy, I ate and drank whatever I wanted. They put it in front of me, and I made a glutton of myself my first couple trips to Italy. Not going to lie, I really enjoyed it. Here's the deal though. I'd hop on the airplane, fly back to America, jump on a scale, and I would have lost 2, 3 pounds in a week of being in Italy, eating whatever I wanted to eat. And it occurred to me, what's the difference? Besides the taste? You eat a piece of bacon over there, it's like licking a 9-volt battery. The eggs are a different color. The cheese at breakfast, cheese, lunch meat, eggs, croissant, all these things were served with breakfast. Espresso, cappuccino, whatever you want, cream, real cream in your coffee, not some weird chemical out of a carton. And I ate all that. I drank wine with dinner. Dinner was 3, 4 courses over 3 hours with some kind of corporate dinner, and then walk back to the hotel, boom, get up and do it the next day. Folks, I lost weight. So that after a few times of going to Italy, I said, I got to watch what I eat. I can't do this every time. I got to watch what I eat. So one week I went to Italy and I kind of watched what I ate. I watched my portions. I didn't drink so much. I tried to behave like a normal Italian would behave, living in their own country. Folks, I dropped like 7 pounds in a week. So as a fat American, you can imagine I go, wait a minute, something's up. And so I started to pay more attention to quacks on the internet that would talk about crazy things like food being illegal that's sold in the United States. It's illegal in other countries. And then I thought about my trips to Italy. Did I have Doritos in Italy? No, I didn't. Did I have certain chips, certain dips, certain things that we see in our grocery stores? Did I see those while I was in Italy? No, I didn't. And my assumption was I was an American, then I'm in Italy. They don't have the same brands. They don't have the same distribution channels. They don't, in my mind, they just don't sell those here. No, they don't sell them there because they're illegal there. When the food you're buying at the store here is illegal there, you need to ask, why? Why is it illegal? Oh, because it's poison. And then someone like RFK Jr. comes along, half a decade later and says, oh, yeah, all this stuff is poison. Here's just one chemical, and this is what it does to you. And there's hundreds of these chemicals. And we're going to try our best to eradicate the use of these chemicals in our food and our hyper-processed foods going forward. We are going to reduce the amount of poison in the food chain. And when we reduce the amount of poison in the food chain, we're going to reduce our reliance on big pharma, which I'm not a big supporter of big pharma in the first place. And then we're going to reduce our reliance on big pharma, which is going to lower our overall medical expenses as a country. People go, we can't afford all this stuff. What we can't afford is to stay the course we are on. And so I'm all for it. I am all for it. As a person that's older, that bicycles and runs occasionally and goes to the gym 2, 3 times a week. As someone that tries to stay active as an older person, I cook most of my meals at home. I don't eat out a lot. I really try to watch what I'm doing, but there's still a little bit of a struggle. Why? Because even the meat we buy at the supermarket has additives and sugars and all kinds of stuff in it. And so if that gets reduced and we have a more whole food oriented diet, and the ability to buy more whole foods from the stores without going completely bankrupt, we are going to come out the other side healthier and more prosperous because we're not paying the back end of big pharma, insurance premiums, hospital visits, and all those things. But it's going to be a seed versus harvest thing, I believe. I think it's going to be harder up front than it will be later, but we got to get over the hump. Just kind of my thing. People might think I'm crazy, but that's that. So here we are, a Friday morning. I'm giving you more of my thoughts than I usually give. Usually it's just about business, what we're doing, how we're doing it. Today we talked about the Tyson fight. We talked about views of the Tyson fight. We talked about the White House visit and a little bit about politics, not too much. But what I really wanted to focus on was when we see this ebb and flow in politics as a business owner, how is that going to affect how we run our business? And for me, I am super optimistic, super optimistic. Oh, what's he say here? I'm doing a job. I actually hate it. I would like to start a business. How to start? Sri Lankan. Your advice will be very helpful. Rantaro, I think you've come to the right place. I encourage so many people to become self-employed. Go way back, 2000. So in the year 2000, I was working a job that I too hated. I was working in the automotive industry. I was working roughly 14 hours a day, standing on a concrete floor and arguing with people about how to fix their cars. Okay, that was basically my job. And I would go from dealership to dealership and I would help fix these dealers. And they would get better over time, but something would generally happen where somebody would ask me to break a law or break my ethics, and I would end up leaving and going to another dealership. And I was feeling really dejected after doing this for a decade and a half. I got really dejected and thought I need to find a different path. I need to distract myself with something else. And I didn't know it was a job at the time. I didn't know it was a business, in all fairness. I just thought, you know what? I'm kind of interested in the internet and how websites work. And so I bought a program, Dreamweaver, as part of a package. It was a Macromedia Studio MX, I think is what it was called back in the day. It is now known as Adobe, right? So it used to be called Macromedia. And so I bought Macromedia, the software, in the old days, on DVDs, CDs, whatever. I bought the program, locked myself in the basement for a month, and I learned how to make websites in Dreamweaver. And then I just started doing it as a hobby. That hobby turned into a referral to build for a nonprofit organization. So I built a nonprofit organization, a website. I don't even think I charged them for it. I think I just did it for experience. And then they said, "Oh, this is really nice. This is really good. This is so awesome." I was like, "Oh, this is unique." Right. And so then I got involved in hosting and, where do I put people's websites? So I had to figure out, well, how does hosting work? And then I just learned as we went, right? I did some graphics. I did some more website builds. And then by 2006, 2007, right as the economy here in the United States was crashing, I wasn't making much in the car business then, right? Because the market was really crashing. People weren't spending money at the dealership anymore. So now I'm still working 14 hours a day, standing on concrete, but now I'm not making any money. And I thought, you know what? I could just help people launch businesses and build websites. And I bet you I could make the same money and not have to stand on a concrete floor and argue with people all day. And that's literally what happened, Rantharo. That's definitely a simplified story, but that's what happened. And so now that I've done this, and now that I've helped hundreds of other people follow a similar path, I will tell you, if you know anything, if you do anything, if you have any experience in any field, you know more about it than somebody else does. Right. And that's a weird way to look at things sometimes, because sometimes we'll be in the middle of something and we'll think, I'm just a normal person and all these other people are smarter than me. You might tell yourself that, but remember, wherever you're at in life, wherever you're at in a process, there's people ahead of you and there's people behind you. And you have value that you can add to the people behind you. And that's where the idea of being a consultant or a counselor really came to life for me as a person. So I had all this experience from the car business, from the job I said I didn't like. Remember that? So I wrote and published a book on the car business. I wasn't expecting much out of that, but I was making websites, and then I published that book, and then I got hired as a trainer to teach people how to run car dealerships more efficiently. Then I got a job in power sports working for Ducati and then Suzuki. And each one of these jumps was a substantial growth in our economic picture, right? So it definitely took a lot of time. It took a lot of time and it took a lot of work. But here's the deal. If you're in a job that you hate, what skill have you learned in that job that you hate? What skill have you learned that you could teach other people about? And if you can teach other people about that skill, you could make an online course, or you could get work with other companies showing their employees how to do the skills that you've learned how to do. There's always a way to share your expertise, and it could be anything that you like to do. I have a course that I started on how to ride a bicycle. That sounds completely stupid. That sounds ridiculous. But here's the deal. There's a lot of people in America that ride bicycles for leisure, for fun. And some want to know, do they want to go road biking? Do they want to go mountain biking? Do they want to do cyclocross? And so if you create trainings in each of those specialties and then give details for each of those specialties and package them as individual courses, people actually get interested and they buy the courses and they learn how to ride a bike from you. Sounds crazy. With Lifter LMS, there's a guy that has a course on how to make balloon animals. I'm not making that up. Balloon animals. And he makes a fair amount of money with a course on how to make balloon animals. So wherever you're at, and when I say where, I mean Sri Lanka, Vietnam, France, Italy. I've got people all over the globe that I interact with, and I'm really big on the consultative path. So it would be making a website that teaches people how to do things, doing live things like I do here, like throw up a StreamYard or a Zoom channel and start broadcasting live and just being like, this is what I've learned. This is what I do. I could teach you too. Get in touch. You don't even have to have a formal LMS to get started. You could literally say, hey, this is what I do, and I'm looking for 5 or 6 other people that would like to learn from me. Right? And then you get 5 or 6 people that want to learn from you, and you do a live meeting on Zoom once a week, and you charge them whatever you can charge them for that access to your knowledge. And over time, you'll get referrals from that, and it'll grow, and you'll evolve and become whatever it is you're meant to be in 5 or 10 years. I know people think it's crazy, but that's what I do, and that's how it works. So I am running out of time a little bit. Rantharu. I hope I'm not messing up your name too badly. Thanks for jumping in and having the conversation with us. I think I'm going to do this structure a little bit more and more. I keep experimenting with what works in these lives and where the comments come from. I am absolutely open to your comments and thoughts, even if they are different than mine. I'd actually prefer if they were different than mine, but hopefully respectful, especially when it comes to the political stuff and the messaging and the things like that. I have a couple of friends that are really proactive on the diversity train and the transgender channels and things like that. And at no point is there hate in my intent. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. However, I truly feel that a lot of the DEI initiatives were specifically designed to interfere with the advancement of certain people groups, which is the exact problem with racism, right? And so it's like, just because you reciprocate it or you invert the situation, it doesn't make it right. And so I'm all about meritocracy, adding value to others. And if we focus on adding value to others first, again, it doesn't matter what sex, what color your hair is, what color your skin is, where you come from. None of that matters. There are cultural differences, right? So like someone raised in Italy, Spain, France, Ethiopia, Vietnam, their cultures will be different. There may be different tendencies that those cultures will produce. But as long as they're bringing value, as long as they add value to the conversation and bring value to the circle, then all's good. All right, folks, have yourself a wonderful day. Enjoy your weekend. The other thing I didn't get to mention, and I'm just going to throw it out there, we are getting really busy right now with Black Friday initiatives. So I've had a couple of clients trying to book appointments. Like if you are trying to contact me on Wednesday night to get an appointment on Thursday morning, or if you're trying to contact me on Wednesday and trying to meet with me before the weekend, chances are you're going to run into a booked schedule, right? As we come up on the holiday season, a lot of pre-existing clients also get busy with Black Friday requests or setting up email funnels or marketing campaigns or things like that that our agency helps them with. So please don't get overly discouraged. Jump into the meeting link. If you go to mañananomas.com, you can hit book a call. You can book a call with us. It might be 3-4 days out, 3-4 business days out, but don't get discouraged, right? Just know that we are busy, especially this time of year, between new customers, new projects, and pre-existing customers and projects, because this is just a busy time of year for a lot of people in the tech space. Have yourself a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you next week.